Yo, bro.
Hey, sis, how you doing? What's up? We got a Keika with us, don't we?
Yep,
I'm still here.
Well, that was some pretty awesome stuff to talk about there. I actually had something else that I wanted to check in with sis, and you too, Keika. When sis was growing up, she was a big fan of horses and ponies and, riding in general. And I just wanted to check in with you about that, sis, because I know that was a pretty awesome thing for you growing up to get to do your riding and get to work with those beautiful animals. And I wondered if you missed it, and I wondered if you still thought about it the same way, or, what's it kind of like after all these years?
Well, you know what? I still have a love of horses. I still find them to be fascinating and great, and I really kind of wish I still rode. I don't know if my back problems would let me. It's the only real hesitance that I've had as of the past couple of years to actually get on the back of a horse because of that purpose, because I have some back issues, and I'm afraid that it'll throw those. I've had some good years without any pain that I don't want to bring back that. But I love horses. I love riding them. I enjoy the posts of horsey things that Graham puts up. And I'm still, I still wish that I was still encroached in the horsey style. That love has not diminished in anything with my age. The only thing that has diminished in that age is the fact of having to get up early in the morning and feeding them and late at night making sure they're in and feeding them and cleaning and mucking stalls. So that was those pieces I don't miss.
Right. What was it like doing all of those things? I mean, what was the daily care like, that you were doing?
Well, the farm life back in the day, would have to say was quite interesting. We did live a little bit on the, rough and tumble kind of way for quite a few years, if you remember there, Uncle Bro. And I would have to get up every morning before I'd go to school. And this was a routine, whether it was rain, shine, snow, sun. And I would get up in the morning, about an hour before I really had to start getting ready, and go light the hot water tank, see if I would have hot water for the day, and go feed my horses, because there was two of them at a particular point. Come back in, maybe go back to sleep for another half hour for the hot water to heat up, and then hopefully go take a shower that didn't require icicles, and get ready for school. And so that was kind of the basis of my adolescent years. I look back on it fondly. Those are pieces that I don't miss, but I do still look back upon it fondly because it was a good time of my life. I enjoyed growing up on the farm and having those chores and doing these things. So,
what was it? What were your horses like? What did they mean to you? And tell me about what was it like interacting with them and having a relationship with them.
Well, I had a horsey. My very first horse was not quite sane. We had gotten the first two horses from an auction. The very first one, he was a Shetland pony, but he was a stallion, and he was young, and he was a little crazy, and he attempted to try to rear up on and kind of hoof me down. That means taking his front hoofs and attack me with his front hoofs on a different occasion. And one time he cornered me in between a tractor and him, and Graham had to come out and get him off of me before he did some damage to me. He was a short-lived stay pony. He moved on to a different lifestyle after that. And my next horse, which was my favorite horse that, has great fond memories, was Shags. Uncle Bro, what did you used to call him?
Oh yeah, I had several names for him. I'm ashamed to even bring them up here.
Oh no, bring them up. What are they?
Well, wait a minute. First of all, let's talk about the names. Why did he have two names? What was going on between us that he had to have different names?
Because both of us were very stubborn, and you loved to pick on me. And whenever there was this thing that you used to love to do, and very good at it. And I don't understand how or why this was such a thing with me. But you used to turn my animals, whether they were stuffed or real, against me by just calling them different names or saying something, and all of a sudden they were turned against me, and I don't know why. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely bad news. So there was that aspect of that going on, and Achaika, this was not a highlight of Bro's life for sure. It's not something I'm all that proud of. So for Shags, what kind of a pony was he?
He was a Connemara pony. When Gram first purchased him, she thought he was a bit younger than he was. She knew that he was up in the years, but didn't think he was quite as old as we found out when he got his teeth floated. That's whenever you go and they kind of shave down the teeth so that they don't cause injury while trying to eat, and then they don't want to eat, and because they can overgrow. And when she had someone come in, she found out that he was significantly older than she thought when she got him at the auction. But he literally made his name because he was this big ball of shag when we first got him, and skinny, and but he was the most docile, brightest kind of horsey you could possibly have. We used to call tortilla shells instead of how they were supposed to be pronounced. We called them tortillas. And we would offer him one, and he would answer by clicking his hoof off the ground 3 times, and which was quite unique. He was so docile that when I was still trying to learn how to get my feet as a rider, I would try to jump on his back and climb up his back and just try to mount him in any way. And and he would just kind of just sit there and take it like, okay, you're going to get on sometime. I'll just hang out here until you do. One time when I was riding him bareback on a bareback saddle, I couldn't get back on him. And I jumped off to get some water out of the spring that was down the road from us. And I used the hill to try to jump back up onto his back. Now, Gram will laugh at this because she was with me at the time riding our other horse, Appy. And as I was jumping on his back, I jumped on his back, missed, and fell off the other side. Now, most horses, being slightly on the skittish side, would have jumped off to the side or stomped on me or something like that in response to the actions that I had taken to try to get on him. No, he just kind of looked back and gave me that, yo, stupid, you missed, and stood there and waited for me to get back on. He was precious. It was great. He was a very docile. You didn't need to do much with him. We didn't tie our horses up. The one horse that I mentioned, Appy, she was blind when we got her. She was stored in a boarding. She was being boarded, and the owner stopped feeding her and taking care of her, and stopped paying for the rent for her to be boarded. And so she had turned blind from malnutrition. And Pumpkin my stepfather had brought her home for us, and we brought her back to health, but she always stayed blind. So she became Shags' best friend. And she never left his side. Everywhere he went, she went. And Shags was never in a fenced-in area. He was tied to a tire. And because he didn't like to pull that sucker very far, he never roamed very far. So he stayed within the perimeters of where he was allowed until the corn came in and when the neighbor decided to grow coolant. And that was one of the rare few times we actually had to tie him up and keep him tied up because he would drag that big old tire the whole way down the driveway to the neighbor's cornfield and just have a field day just eating the corn and loved every minute of it. Now, the blind horse, she would follow but not sure what to do, so she would kind of get very worked up and not really go the whole way down. And that's when we would notice that the horses were missing, and we had to go find Shags. After the first one or two times, we knew exactly where to go because he was in just cornfield heaven, just eating up the corn, happy as could be. You know, he got stuck, snagged on a corn stalk. He was okay as long as he could reach other corn stalks. He'll just stand there and eat them. He was great. I loved him. We had to shave him down because he was very shaggy, and we would shave him every summer, and give him a crew cut, and we would give him baths, and he would just take it. He would take everything. He never ever would do anything. The only time he'd ever nip at you was if you were eating a tortilla shell, a tortilla chip, and didn't share. And then he might nip at your butt like, hey, you're eating one, you're not giving me one, excuse me? And that would be the only time. And even then it wasn't a dangerous nip. And we kept him until he passed on. Which was one of my most devastating moments, having my horsey pass on. And my mom made me go to school that day so that she could take care of it the proper way so he wouldn't suffer a farm life way, a proper way. And, that was a hard one. The blind horse, Appy, that we had, she was quite devastated. For quite a period of time. She did call for him for a long time because she was super upset that he was gone. But he made a significant impact in my life. So tell me, what were the names that you used to call my Shag? My poor Shags.
Yeah, I think what I remember was there was two things that I did, and there was probably more, but there were two for sure that I remembered. One was he was a very shaggy beast, and then you and Grandma got the clippers and clipped him, and so he was just his hair was nice and short and good looking, and his mane was clipped, just real nice and tight, and he looked like a sergeant. So I called him Sergeant Shags, which apparently was very upsetting to you. And I also called him Gwimbleweather. Just because I could, I think. and I think you were always puzzled. What's a Gwimbleweather and what's going on here? And I was very puzzled over Gwimbleweather, and actually I remember that more than I remember Sergeant Shags. So that name stuck with me more so. So that was definitely that was a good time. One of the things about that animal, he was a deer animal, and really special for the farm. And like you said, he was the companion for that Appaloosa mare who was almost blind.
She was blind.
Yeah. And so it was a real, I learned something about life in that situation. I learned that we are all put together here for each other, and when one of us goes down, the other goes down. And it was, we really saw that with Shags and with Happy. And, that was a situation where when he was there, she was happy and she was in good health, and she finished up her days in a really good situation. And the same for him. You took good care of him, and that was a joy to see, because he mattered to you, and you took really great care of him, and that was so awesome. And when he finally died of old age, and he was really old. I mean, we had the horse person say that they thought he was 35 or something.
Yeah, and most horses don't make it that old.
Yeah, so I mean, he was just an ancient horse. But what happened is when it was his time and when he died, that was really kind of the beginning of the end for that, for Appy. And that was a sad thing to see, because she relied upon him to know where to go around the farm, because she was blind. She couldn't go anywhere, and she would get lost doing everything without him. And then one day he wasn't there to keep her life full. And, I was really touched by that, and it really made an impression on me that, we're here with each other, and, I'm, in some sense, going through this life, almost blind in some ways. We go through needing each other and relying on each other in ways that maybe aren't obvious at first. And if we don't think about those things when we make our decisions and when we live our life, then we can be flippant with it, And
fun fact about Appy. She was quite phenomenal. She adjusted to her blindness pretty well. She had a rough time, but she also put her faith and her trust in me very much, especially after Shags had passed on. But even then, afterwards, she still was let out, and she still was never tied up, and she still was never fenced in. But she roamed the property line that Shags had taught her over the years that she had him. And any evening, how I would call her to come home and get put away into the shed, into her stall, I would literally stand outside and go, tappy, 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 and clap my hands. And she would come at a flying gallop at me. To go, because she heard me and she'd come to my call. And at a flying gallop, I mean, she was not going slow and just charging right at me. And she would stop 10 feet in front of me, dead stop, and wait for me to come up and grab her and lead her into her stall. And it was fascinating and it was phenomenal and I loved it. And people didn't believe it. When I had to have the choice of boys or horses, and mistakenly chose boys. So Appy went to a new home with children that could give her the attention she needed. I got to go visit her a while after we gave her up. And the kids were kind of like, oh, yeah, she's great and stuff like that. I said, yeah, she has a really neat trick that she, will come to me when I call. And they kind of looked at me funny and didn't really believe it. And I called her, and she still did it. She came at a running gallop at me, stopped 10 feet in front of me, and waited for me to come up to her and pet her. And it just was just really neat. And they were just like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, that's my Appy. You can, that trust factor, that it doesn't matter what species, that trust factor you have, that you can build with someone, that they would do that. And, she was blind, but she trusted that, as soon as she sensed that she was close to me, she would stop and wait for me to come and get her the rest of the way. And it was really neat.